Palpable tensions within the palace before the ceremony had nearly altered everything. Royal advisors feared hostile crowd reactions toward Charles, still seen as responsible for the couple's split. Behind the scenes, they even drafted a scenario where William would walk alone, sparing 12-year-old Harry this public ordeal. But the young prince firmly refused. If the roles had been reversed, William would have done the same for me, he insisted with heartbreaking maturity. The most poignant moment occurred as the procession passed Buckingham Palace. On the famous balcony where the royal family traditionally greets crowds during jubilees, a silent group had gathered. Queen Elizabeth II herself, breaking with the strict protocol that dictates a sovereign never bows to anyone, lowered her head as the cortege passed. A gesture of unparalleled symbolic power, publicly acknowledging Diana's significance to the nation. Along the route, the crowd reached unprecedented density. Over 1 million people pressed together, some since dawn, tossing flowers that gradually transformed the streets into a temporary garden. In Hyde Park, 2 giant screens allowed tens of thousands more anonymous mourners to share in this collective farewell. Mothers clutched Diana-themed dolls, veterans saluted militarily, children laid down naive drawings. Countless spontaneous gestures that rendered these funeral rites profoundly populist. Amid this ocean of grief, the faces of the 2 young princes, frozen under the weight of unbearable loss, would remain etched in memory. William, as he would recount years later, desperately tried to compartmentalize his pain, focusing on the steady rhythm of footsteps to avoid succumbing to emotion. Harry stared at the horizon, seeking an anchor in this waking nightmare. Their nearly 2-hour march became, despite themselves, a universal symbol of children's grief, sparking enduring debates about exposing the young to public sorrow. Yet beyond the controversy, this funeral procession revealed something else: Diana's extraordinary bond with her people. Every wreath thrown, every discreetly wiped tear, every respectful silence composed an unprecedented popular requiem in the modern history of the British monarchy. The rebel princess who shattered conventions received in return an equally unconventional tribute, a final posthumous revolution. The collective mourning following Princess Diana's death transcended all boundaries of class, status, and nationality. But this universal grief raises an intriguing question. Why was Diana buried in a lead-lined coffin? This royal funeral practice stems from a long tradition. Lead-lined coffins are not entirely made of lead but feature a thick metal lining that creates an airtight seal. By blocking external air, this design significantly slows natural decomposition. It is a pragmatic solution, particularly when embalming is not planned, allowing for more dignified and lasting preservation. The added weight was far from symbolic. During Diana's funeral, the Welsh guards faced tangible difficulties carrying the heavy coffin, a revealing detail of the physical reality behind this centuries-old tradition. The metal lining also addresses practical considerations for potential future exhumations, preventing risks of odors or visible bodily decay. While Diana's burial marked a tragic endpoint, her legacy continues to fuel cultural debates. The hit series The Crown recently sparked fierce controversy by recreating the hours following her fatal accident in Paris. Scenes depicting blood-stained paramedics attempting resuscitation proved particularly shocking. Diana's former personal chef, Darren McGrady, present during her lying-in rest at St. James's Palace, publicly condemned this portrayal. On Twitter, his testimony was unequivocal. Princess Diana's coffin was closed during her public viewing. I know, I was there. This latest episode of The Crown is disgusting. His outrage resonated with other close associates and even some crew members, disturbed by what they deemed sensationalist dramatization. The controversy peaked with a scene showing Prince Charles identifying his ex-wife's body in a French hospital. The series depicts him breaking down in tears before an open coffin holding Diana's remains, lingering on the absence of an earring, a detail critics called particularly morbid. More unsettlingly, reports indicate actress Elizabeth Debicki had to play dead lying in a coffin for these sequences. While The Crown has always taken creative liberties with royal history, this portrayal crossed an invisible line for many. A production member admitted these scenes were uncomfortable to film, calling the narrative choices unnecessary dramatization. The inclusion of a priest administering last rites to Diana added a spiritual dimension that raised questions about the sourcing of such details. This controversy highlights broader questions about the limits of fictionalizing recent tragedies. While creators defend their approach as an exploration of royal grief, Diana's loved ones view it as a violation of mourning's intimacy. The gap between documented reality, the sealed coffin, the protocol-bound funeral, and dramatic reenactment illustrates the delicate balance between artistic tribute and respect for the deceased. The tension on the set was palpable. A visibly disgusted crew member had voiced their discomfort. Princes William and Harry had never seen their mother's body in a coffin. Why, then, force this image upon the British public? The prevailing sentiment was that the Crown's writers and producers were deliberately courting emotion, even scandal, to boost ratings, disregarding the royal family's still raw grief. As the controversy swelled, some collaborators confessed their profound unease. Everyone felt uncomfortable filming this. It's obscene and should be banned from airing. One confided, condemning a sensationalism that had crossed the bounds of respect. Netflix, facing backlash, swiftly clarified that the crash itself would not be shown this season. A conciliatory gesture that failed to soothe tempers. For the real issue lay elsewhere. The dramatized reconstruction of Diana's final hours, steeped in what many deemed morbid theatrics, was seen as exploitation. Debbie Frank, the princess's longtime astrologer and confidant, joined the chorus of critics. For William and Harry, watching these scenes would be devastating, she explained. To force them to relive this is shockingly callous. She underscored how Diana's death had shattered a generation. Her passing remains our era's greatest collective trauma. It fractured the national psyche. A fracture that Diana's inner circle believed the series needlessly reopened. Ken Worf, her former bodyguard, captured their outrage. William will find these scenes repulsive, and Charles will be horrified. To those who knew her intimately, the line between tribute and violation had been breached. The producers likely feel entitled to manipulate tragedy for drama, Frank noted. But they forget this was a real mother, a real woman. Yet far from cameras and reenactments, Diana's true farewell unfolded in strict privacy. That morning, in a dimly lit chapel, a handful of loved ones gathered. Her sons, Prince Charles, her mother Frances Shand Kidd, her Spencer siblings, a close friend, and a clergyman. No pageantry, no speeches. Only the weighted silence of shared sorrow. The princess lay dressed in a black woolen dress, a subdued, elegant piece by Catherine Walker, her favorite designer, who had clothed so many of her iconic moments. A personal choice. Diana herself had selected it weeks earlier, favoring the understatement of a flawlessly tailored suit over gaudy gowns. Her black stockings and matching pumps spoke of a woman meticulous to the end. In her clasped hands, two poignant objects told the story of her life. First, a rosary gifted by Mother Teresa, who had died the same week, as if sealing their spiritual bond. Second, a photo of William and Harry, recovered from her purse after the crash. This snapshot, which she always carried while traveling, was slipped between her fingers, a final maternal tether. Her final resting place? A tranquil island at the heart of Althorp Park, the Spencer ancestral estate. Sheltered from public view beneath an ancient oak, Diana returned to her forebears' soil. The grave's exact location remains a guarded family secret, preserved as a sanctuary, a symbolic choice. After a life lived in flashbulbs, the woman who captivated the world now rests in the seclusion of a private garden. The coordinates 52.283082 degrees north, 1.00278 degrees west marked the sacred ground where Diana would lie for eternity, embraced by Althorp's melancholic beauty. On this land steeped in centuries of history, the soil was consecrated by the Bishop of Peterborough before the funeral rites, a solemn ritual to honor her remains with deepest reverence. But it was a seemingly minor gesture at the ceremony's close that would ignite fury and reopen dynastic wounds. As the final tribute ended, the royal standard, the crimson and gold pall that had draped the coffin during the procession, was abruptly removed. Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler and confidant, later recounted the moment with undimmed emotion. According to him, Earl Charles Spencer, the princess's brother, personally stripped away the royal emblem, replacing it with the Spencer flag. "She's a Spencer again now," the aristocrat allegedly whispered, a loaded phrase that echoed like a cannon shot through the grieving silence. Burrell minced no words with the press. To him, the act was an insult to her legacy. It was a calculated move, a settling of scores between the Spencers and the Windsors, he declared. The ex-butler stressed the cruel paradox. Diana, who had fiercely clung to her Princess of Wales title post-divorce, was symbolically stripped of her royal status in death. She would have been deeply wounded, Burrell asserted, framing it as a final familial betrayal. Faced with these accusations, the Earl Spencer responded vehemently, calling Burrell's statements toxic lies. In an official declaration, he explained that the removal of the royal standard had been meticulously planned with the Queen's officials, in strict adherence to protocol. Nothing in this gesture aimed to diminish Diana's ties to the crown, he asserted, describing the change instead as a symbolic return to his sister's Spencer roots. Yet despite the denials, the shadow of controversy lingered. Observers noted the bitter irony. Diana, who had transcended divisions through her humanity, had unwittingly become the subject of renewed conflict between her biological family and her family by marriage. This tension reflected a deeper drama, the difficult reconciliation between her status as a global icon and her intimate identity as a Spencer daughter. The very location of the burial bore the scars of these contradictions. Initially, Diana was to rest in the family vault at St. Mary's Church in Great Brington, near the ancestral home, a logical choice at the heart of her childhood village. But witnessing the immense public grief, the Earl Spencer feared the worst. This small 12th-century Norman church, nestled in a tranquil cemetery, risked being overwhelmed by an endless stream of pilgrims. How could familial mourning remain private in such a vulnerable sanctuary? The solution emerged as poetic inspiration, a solitary island at the center of the round oval, that mirroring Lake dug in the 18th century by landscape architect Capability Brown. Hidden within Althorp Park's 550 acres, this place offered serenity shielded from view. To reach it, a discreet path was traced, flanked by 36 majestic oaks, one tree for each year of Diana's tragically brief life. Each step toward the island thus became a journey through her memory, from her birth at Park House to her final summer. The island itself, surrounded by water lilies and whispering reeds, was arranged with elegant simplicity. The light marble tombstone, engraved simply with the name Diana, faces south, a symbolic orientation toward openness to the people she cherished. For swans, gifted by the Queen herself, glide silently across the dark waters, living guardians of this sanctuary. A touching detail, the oak roots gradually intertwine the soil, creating a natural barrier against time's erosion, as if nature itself were uniting to protect the people's princess's eternal rest. At the heart of Althorp House, the waters of the 400-acre lake shimmered under soft light, a sanctuary preserved from time. Majestic swans moved soundlessly, tracing silver wakes across the surface where water lilies bloomed, flowers Diana treasured for their purity. All around, a carpet of white roses, another beloved symbol of the princess, formed a delicate floral setting. This tranquil landscape contrasted with the emotion that had filled these grounds 26 years earlier. At the southern edge of the oval lake, the white pavilion stood like a discreet sentinel. Did you know these marble columns had a traveling history? They came from the Admiralty Gardens in London, where young Diana loved walking with her father. Relocated stone by stone after her death, this gazebo became a tangible bridge between her London past and her spiritual legacy at Althorp. Steps away, the family arboretum spread its century-old foliage, oaks planted by generations of Spencers, silent witnesses to a lineage that had shaped English history for centuries. The decision to bury Diana on this secluded island addressed a dual necessity, preserving the intimacy of grief while honoring her profound connection to these lands. On September 6, 1997, as millions watched Westminster, a discreet procession advanced through the morning twilight. Men of the 2nd Battalion of the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment carried their colonel with palpable gravity. Their synchronized steps echoed on the gravel path, a final tribute to one who had supported their humanitarian missions from 1992 to 1996. The boat crossing to the island felt eternal, each oarsman struggling against the weight of tears as much as the current. Yet for over 2 decades, one question haunted the public. Why Althorp rather than the Spencer Ancestral Vault at Great Brington? In 2023, Karen Spencer, the Earl's wife, finally provided a definitive answer during an exchange as unexpected as it was revealing. On social media, she shared 2 springtime photographs of the lake, capturing the harmony between nature and reverence that defines Althorp. Beneath these bucolic images, a user dared to voice the burning question. Why isn't Diana resting near her father in the family crypt? Karen's response was a model of historical clarity. British law required cremation for access to the vault. It wasn't her wish. A simple revelation, yet it had the effect of a cultural earthquake. Many had imagined protocol disputes or family conflicts. In truth, everything came down to scrupulous respect for Diana's wishes. This legal detail suddenly illuminated every aspect of the princess's final journey. The island was not a strategic retreat from prying eyes, but the physical embodiment of a promise. Rest true to her personality, free yet serene. The chosen flowers, the presence of swans, creatures she fed as a teenager down to the pavilion stone imbued with London memories. Everything took on new meaning. In the comments, admirers expressed relief. At last, the truth after 26 years of speculation, wrote one. Another emphasized the symbolic importance of this clarification from the family. This is the first time a Spencer has publicly explained this choice. It ends so many misinterpretations. If you look at photos of the lake today, you'll see more than an idyllic landscape. Each water lily, each reflection in the calm water tells the story of a woman who, even in death, remained true to her essence. Far from icy crypts, beneath the shifting light of Northamptonshire she cherished. A simple truth, long obscured by the world's tumult. Though this revelation finally ended years of speculation about Diana's resting place, the story remains far more complex than a mere reply to Instagram comments. For William and Harry, Althorp House represents much more than picturesque scenery. It's an emotional refuge, an intimate sanctuary where they reconnect with their mother's memory. In his memoir Spare, Harry shared a heart-wrenching detail. The bridge leading to the burial island was deliberately removed. This gesture, both practical and symbolic, embodied the Spencers' determination to protect Diana one last time from intrusive lenses, granting her eternal peace shielded from view. Over the years, the princes transformed this tranquil corner of Northamptonshire into personal ritual. Harry even brought Meghan Markle here before their wedding, sharing this emotionally charged place. Yet a shadow looms over this family intimacy. Did King Charles ever pass through Althorp's gates to pay respects? In 2001, Earl Spencer, the prince's maternal uncle, lifted a corner of the veil during a BBC interview. Prince Charles has a standing invitation, but he's never taken it up. This subtle revelation traces enduring rifts between Windsors and Spencers, suggesting Diana's ghost still haunts dynastic relations. Althorp House, with its 500 years of history, transcends its role as mausoleum. This 13,000-acre ancestral estate embodies the soul of the Spencers, an aristocratic family as ancient as the Tudors. For nearly 2 decades, its gates remained closed to the public, fueling wild speculation. Why such isolation? The answer came in 2017 when Earl Spencer revealed a chilling secret to Radio 4. No fewer than 4 attempted intrusions on Diana's grave had been thwarted since 1997. Imagine the nightmare. While the world mourned the princess, I had to protect her remains from potential desecrators. He confessed, voice tight with emotion. This revelation sheds new light on the decision to bury her on an island, a natural fortress against morbid curiosity. Althorp's exceptional 2022 public opening created a modern pilgrimage phenomenon. Visitors now wander avenues lined with centuries-old oaks, contemplate Diana's portraits in the Spencer Gallery, or admire the Doric temple by the lake. Yet beneath this apparent serenity, The estate exhales a peculiar melancholy. Some visitors describe an enigmatic, almost oppressive atmosphere near the lake, as if the princess's shadow still lingers. This paradox alone encapsulates Diana's legacy. A private sanctuary unwillingly transformed into a global stage, where intimate grief coexists with insatiable public fascination. Even in death, the people's princess seems condemned to navigate between light and shadow. The public's outpouring of grief, however sincere, created an electric, nearly explosive atmosphere. Flowers and candles piled high before the Spencer gates. But behind this tide of love lurked unsettling unpredictability. Whispers circulated that misguided fans or ill-intentioned individuals might attempt boundary breaches, even desecrate Diana's final refuge. A threat Earl Spencer took seriously each time he heard a branch crack in Althorp's night. "Imagine having to protect your sister even in death," he later confided, voice choked with emotion. The break-in attempts were real. He counted at least 3 in recent years. Furtive figures caught on infrared cameras, anonymous hands leaving disturbing letters on the tombstone. Yet the ancestral estate remained a fortress. Here, surrounded by those who truly loved her, Diana is safe. There are strange people, but Althorp is her haven, he insisted, fists clenched on the table during a rare interview. His mission as protector had begun long before that August 31st, 1997. Charles recalls with suppressed rage the years of media torment inflicted upon his sister. They weren't just paparazzi. It was a relentless hunt. The tabloids crossed the line daily, scaling Kensington Palace walls, intercepting her mail, even tampering with her phone lines. But one chilling episode haunts him particularly. On a winter evening in 1996, Diana described the explicit threats from a notorious photographer. He'd sworn to pursue her until her last breath, and worse, that he'd defile her grave. Charles's voice chokes up recounting this confidence. Those words have echoed like a curse for 27 years. The aftershock of the state funeral still follows him into sleepless nights. "I sometimes relive those endless hours," he admits, his gaze distant. The contrast was unbearable. The coffin draped in royal standards, Westminster's bells tolling, and the weeping crowd chanting "Diana, Diana," through driving rain. To the world, it was the solemn farewell to the people's princess. To Charles, it was the child he'd watched grow up in Park House's corridors, the young woman whose teenage letters he'd once corrected for spelling, reduced to a global spectacle even in death. To this day, as he places white flowers in the island sanctuary of the Round Oval, the Spencer uncle scans the horizon. Every wilted petal gathered, every suspicious footprint on the gravel path is scrutinized. The silent war continues. In the shadow of century-old linden trees, Althorp guards its most fragile treasure, a woman who captivated the world yet found peace only in the secrecy of a man-made lake and the eternal vigilance of her brother.